So Psalm 137 ends like this. Happy shall they be who take your little children and dash them against the rock. Ouch. Every Sunday, our church sings the Psalms, and sometimes they make us very uncomfortable because there is a lot of violence and revenge in the Psalms, and sometimes it's very vivid. I mean, as a father of a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, to have to sing, "May they dash your babies against rocks," that makes me uncomfortable. So what is all of this violence and revenge doing in the Psalms and in the Bible? I think they're there for a very good reason. Because violence and revenge infects all of us. It's there. It would be nice if we could say it's because of the Bible that we are violent. But we can't. Violence was in the world before the Bible, and it's in the world after the Bible. And what the Bible is doing here in the Psalms and in other places is reflecting back to us our ugly desires for revenge and violence. Take this, for example. Many of us had a desire for revenge and violence after 9/11. We wanted to get those guys back. Now, if we're going to say that the Bible is ugly because there's a lot of violence and revenge in it, then we also have to say that we are ugly because there's a lot of desire for revenge and violence within us. If you didn't feel that way after 9/11, think about how you feel about one of your coworkers who's obnoxious, you can't stand, and you wish that coworker would just go away or get fired. That's a similar desire. Think about your spouse who always has the right thing to say to push your buttons at exactly the right time, and you spend the rest of your day trying to figure out what you can say when you get back home to get back at your spouse, to push his or her buttons back. This desire for revenge is within all of us. It infects our relationships at work, at home, it affects our politics, it affects every aspect of our life. And the Bible, the Psalms, are putting this right in front of us in a very vivid way. Now, the other thing that the Psalm is doing something very radical for the ancient world, and that is this. If you look at the beginning of Psalm 137, you will see something very strange going on. The author of the Psalm is the victim of Babylon, of the Babylonian Empire, who has taken away of the identity of the Judeans. They conquer the Judeans and they take away their temple. This is everything that they had. This was their identity, and it's taken away from them. And they believe that God is still on their side. This is pretty radical for the ancient world. If you look throughout the ancient world, basically the only things that we have left are the idea that God is on the side of the victors, the ones who conquer. God is with the powerful, the elite. Here we see a transformation of that idea, that God stands with the victims. And there is, at the end, a desire for revenge, but this idea gets challenged throughout the Bible and the Psalms as well. It gets challenged because the idea that God stands with the victims ends up coming to its conclusion in saying, this means that you should not create victims. You see this in 2nd Isaiah, where you have the suffering servant who is the victim of his culture and refuses to act back in a way that victimizes others. You see this in the life of Jesus, who refuses to make victims out of his victimizers, out of those who persecute him. And he calls his followers to do the same thing, to live in a life of forgiveness. He says things when Peter tries to protect him as he's being arrested and cuts off the guard's ear. He tells Peter to put the sword back in his place, and then he takes the guard's ear and he heals it. I mean, this is what God is like, according to the early Christians. God is the one who doesn't enact our desires for revenge, but seeks to transform those desires into a desire to heal. But first, we have to deal with those desires for revenge. They're within all of us, and Jesus seeks to transform them into a desire for forgiveness and healing, even forgiveness to our enemies, and healing for the relationship that has been broken between us and our enemies. That is the goal. So those are my thoughts on the Psalms and 2nd Isaiah and Jesus, and I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks.